What's up, Kadivas, and welcome back to the channel this week. My name is Priscilla. I'm a Nigerian women's wear designer based in the UK. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to create this maxi gown I have on here. This gown combines print and pattern or print, and the top half is like a plain red. It has this tie shoulder detail, and then the skirt is actually two layers. The top layer is gathered into the waistline of the top, and then the bottom layer, which is longer, is gathered into the hemline of the top skirt. If you do enjoy this tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up. That thumbs up helps this video to reach more eyes on YouTube and just get our community growing and thriving. If you haven't subscribed and you're watching this video, sis, bruv, auntie, uncle, slay mama, slay papas, please click that subscribe button down below and turn the notification bell as well, so you know every single week when I have new videos on the channel. Okay, let's get into this tutorial because I absolutely love how this gown came out. I would definitely be wearing this. Please, nobody should judge me if you see me wearing this on the gram more than 4 times, because I would definitely be wearing this a lot, like a lot. I'm going to be working with the following materials to create this maxi gown. My main print here is this green, yellow, red, white and black Ankara print. This is a cotton print that I got when I visited Lagos, Nigeria. I also got some plain red cotton to contrast the print, as well as a red thread. I also have my pattern making and sewing tools handy with me. Now, if you are going to be making this for yourself, I recommend you work with your measurements or that of your client for the absolute best outcome, because your measurements what you're going to use to create the sewing patterns, and that will just ensure a better fit on yourself or on the person that you're making the garment for. Now, before we get into the pattern making in this video, if you have not liked already, this is your sign and your cue to do so. Head on and click that like button down below. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell as well, so you get notified whenever I post new videos on the channel. Now back to the tutorial. We're going to be starting off with making the pattern for the top half of this maxi gown, and I'm just going in here to draw a short horizontal line. This is going to become the neckline of the top. And from that point, I'm marking 8 inches. This measurement is my shoulder to waist measurement minus 5 inches. I'm going to draw and extend that line as square across, so that becomes the waistline of the top half of my dress. Now I'm going to be marking half of my across chest measurement. Mine is 5.5, and the across chest is just from like where your armpit starts from the other side. You don't want it to go too far out, you sort of want it more inwards. And then below that, I'm marking 3.5 inches below. This is going to help me to create the arm curve of the top part of this dress. Along that line I just drew, I'm going to be marking 1/4 of my bust measurement plus half an inch is the overall fit of this style is on the looser side, hence the reason why for the additional ease. Now with that in place, I'm going in to draw in the arm curve and the side seam, which is essentially just a straight seam from the underneath of the arm curve all the way to that waistline. I'm going in here to add my 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around. I always encourage people to add seam allowance on the pattern, so you don't have to think about it when you're cutting your fabric, but if you prefer to add your seam allowance on your fabric, then that works as well. Now for the back top pattern, I'm just going in to trace off the front. Everything is the same for the back except the arm curve. So the center back, the waistline, the side seam, the neckline, it is the arm curve that is shallower for the back. So essentially you could use the same pattern to cut your back, but just remember to make your back arm curve shallower when you're cutting onto your fabric, if you don't want to make a separate pattern like I have done here. And I'm just going to go in to cut out all of my patterns. I have the top, which is the front and the back, and these are the only patterns I'm going to make, because the rest of this dress you can cut straight onto fabric if you do your calculations right. So now that I have my patterns all done, I'm going to set them aside and go in to cut them onto my fabric. Now the top half of the dress is going to be in this plain red cotton, and I'm cutting a pair of each. So there is 2 pieces for your front and 2 pieces for your back, and I'm cutting these on a fold. So there's essentially 1 piece that goes across the front and 1 piece that goes across the back. I'm cutting a pair because I want to bag out the neckline and the arm curve so I don't have to think about finishing. Now I'm going in here to measure the waistline or the hemline of the top half, and that measurement is going to help me create the width of the first layer of the skirt as well as the second layer. I have sort of written the calculations on the screen so that guides you when you're creating yours. Now the first layer of the skirt is 35 inches long and 10 inches wide, and I've cut 2 pieces for this because I really want a lot of volume on the bottom half of this dress. Now the bottom layer I made longer because I didn't want to do multiple layers, and the second layer is 70 inches long and 35 inches wide, and I'm going to be gathering these into each other to make the bottom half of this dress. In exciting news, I'm going to be having my first YouTube live sewing session, and in this one we're going to be making a swimsuit. This is going to be on the 5th of June from 4 to 6 p.m. GMT. Here is a list of materials that you should prepare if you're going to be joining us on the day. And make sure to comment down below the hashtag sewing with Kim so that way I know you guys are excited for the live stream. Now there's a cash prize of £100 to be won by the person who recreates the best swimsuit from this day, and the winner is going to be announced on the date shared on the screen. I look forward to sewing with you guys on that day, and let's get back into the tutorial. Now the last thing I cut out of the screen is these strips. These strips are going to become the shoulder straps, and they measure 28 inches in length and about 2 inches wide. And I cut 4 pieces because you need a pair to tie up to make your shoulder strap. This way I don't need to add any hooks or rings. I just tie it on top of my shoulder and I have it fixed in place. Now I folded it right sides together and I'm sewing the ends closed so I can turn it inside out to create my shoulder strap. Now to turn it inside out, I've passed a safety pin through a red ribbon or a red strip of material, and I'm going to pass that into the tunnel until I arrive at the other end. Once I arrive at the other end, I'm going to remove my safety pin and then tack it down this way to catch some of that strip of fabric inside. This is how I'm going to be turning my strap inside out. If you watch a few of my tutorials, you know this is my go-to way of turning, especially slim straps. So once you pull that ribbon from the other side, it forces the tunnel to pull itself outwards, which will help you turn it inside out. And if you don't have that long pull thing that people use to turn strips, this is a great way to actually create slim straps or belts. Now I repeated this for all 4 so I can fit them into the neckline of my top. Now because I cut a pair of this, what we're going to do is sandwich the straps along the neckline of the top half of this dress. So I'm just passing in the strap like so, and what you want to do is have the raw end or the open end of your strap along the very edge of your neckline, and you do this for your back and your front pieces. And the plan would be to sew all the way up the side, around the arm curve, across the neckline, down the other arm curve, and down the other side. So what you end up doing is you end up finishing the neckline, the arm curve, and even the side seams of your top as well. And I'm just going in here to sew across the neckline, catching the straps in there as well. So once I turn this inside out, give it a nice press, I have this piece ready to be fitted to the other side along the side seams. Just be conscious of your seam allowance. So at first I stitched on a ½ centimeter, and then now that I have everything turned inside out, I'm going to be sewing right sides together and joining the side seam on that extra ½ centimeter to finish off the top. Okay, so here is a closer look of the top. I just stitched up the top, tied up. I made these little cute bows on the shoulder on both sides, and everything fits so far so good. I did want this bottom to be loose so I'll be able to wear the dress without needing any zips or any buttons, so it goes in well. I will say the one thing I can see straight off is it is gaping on top here, which doesn't really bother me. But if it's going to bother you, it would be a case of making two. You can even see it's already naturally asking for a dot. It's asking for a small dot here and a small dot there. But if it doesn't bother you, you can just let it do what it's meant to do. Let it just like fall naturally against your body like this, sort of like that, if it does not bother you. But if it does, you need to create two dots here, so one here and one here. That will get rid of the gaping on the front. It doesn't do it on the back, thankfully, so the dots will just need to be placed on the front if you don't like the gaping that it does. But aside that, everything looks fine. I'm just going to go into work on the skirt that is going to have the first gathered layer and then the second longer gathered layer on the bottom. And yeah, show you guys the finished outcome at the end. Oh, exciting. Next up, I'm going to be working on the top skirt, and starting with one end, I'm going to be using the longest stitch to sew across that edge like so, leaving some gaps at the beginning and at the end of the fabric. Once I have that stitched, I am going to pull the threads to gather up the fabric. I'll gather as much as I can, but this I would have to like ease out and ease into the hemline of the top. I'm going to do this for both pieces of my top skirt. Once I have them both gathered, I'm going to be joining up the sides and not try to stitch up the threads, because you want the threads there loose so you can adjust the gathers as much as you would like. So I'm going to go in to sew on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, joining both panels together. You can do this entire thing as one continuous fabric. I just wanted the side seams to sit on the side rather than have it on the center back. Now once I have that done, I overlocked it, and I'm going to go in to join the top edge of that bottom skirt into the waistline or the hemline of the top, the red top. Once I have that pinned in place, I'm going to be sewing it on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and as I'm sewing, I'm spreading the gathers across so it's evenly distributed. And I found that using these little pegs when it comes to like thick layers or thick seams just makes my life so much easier over using pins, so I would alternate using them whenever it's like a thicker fabric. Once I have that stitched in place, I'm going in to overlock the seam across. My overlocker definitely had it for this one because that was such a thick seam, but we succeeded, and this is what the gown is looking like. Now this is sort of like the first half done, and like this already looks like a really cute like peplum top that if you just hem the bottom, you could actually wear this as a top. The last stage of making this maxi gown is working on the second or longer layer. This one has a much longer and wider fabric, and the same way I gathered in one edge and joined them together on the sides is what I'm going to be doing for this bottom piece as well. So I sewed with the longest stitch on top, pull the threads to gather it in, and then I'm putting right sides together so I can sew up the sides and have one piece that I can fit into the bottom of that top skirt that we stitched initially. So sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, I'm joining both layers of my bottom skirt together. After sewing it up, I went ahead to overlock that seam just to finish it off nicely, and then I'm going to be joining the top to the bottom skirt. Now I'm just going to evenly distribute the gathers. I tried not to sew that gathering thread because you want that thread free and it gives you the room to actually distribute the gathers evenly across. And I'm going to use my trusty old pegs just to hold everything together. This I'm going to take to my machine, and I'm going to be sewing up the long bottom skirts to the hemline of the shorter top skirt. If you don't want to have a long piece like I have done, you can even create like a second and a third layer. I just wanted to save it and stop at 2, so it's like a short top layer and a longer bottom layer. Once I was done stitching that in, I went ahead to overlock that seam, and I'm going in here to finish off the hemline. For the hemline of this dress, I overlocked it all the way around, and I just folded it in by about 1 centimeter, and I'm just stitching it in. Once I had that stitched in place, I went ahead to give my piece a press to relax all of the stitching, and this is what the final outcome looks like. this turned out so nice. Like, this is not a case of it's Ankara or it's colorful. This was such a good project. I feel very, very proud, and I think that is something that you guys would have fun creating as well. You can play around with the prints, with the colors, also with the length of this dress. You can do this shorter, longer, and you can add more layers if you wanted to. You just apply the same principle of make the bottom layer bigger so you can gather it into the top layer, and that way you add more volume to this gown. But if you guys enjoyed watching this project, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to tag me on your recreations on social media at Kim Dave Designs, and until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye.